Welcome back to the episode of the Startup Therapy Podcast. This is Ryan Rutan, joined as always by my friend, the founder and CEO of startups.com, Will Schroeder. Will, there's a lot of talk in the startup space about the fact that we need to stay focused. And while I agree with that, by and large, I think there's a few things that we need to consider within that. And there's an important aspect, I think, that's played a part in both of our lives and startup careers and some of our hobbies too, that shows up on a pretty regular basis. And in fact, you were just having a conversation about this with one of our startups.com members. So why don't you kick off with that, and let's go from there.
Well, it started the conversation started with nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. But what was funny was he reached out to me because he got my newsletter, which is usually the basis for how we do these. And he said, "Will, I got to be honest. This sounds like it was written by AI." And I just thought, and it wasn't, by the way, right?
Yeah.
But the time that we're in, like the times that we're in, I thought it was funny that like everyone is kind of like trying to see like, is
Yeah.
it real or, like
Yeah.
whatever. And I wrote back to him and I said, no, actually, this was actually written by me. However, maybe because I've been spending so much time with AI, I'm starting to write like AI, which I thought
Well,
was kind of interesting.
yes, and AI was trained on some of the best writers in the world, right? So maybe you're just one of the best writers in the world, Will, right? Maybe
That's
it's just
exactly where I was headed with that. So
that's where I started. I mean, I think that's the most likely scenario.
yeah. So he and I were talking. We were going through some challenges he was having, and so for who is it? We never reveal names on here, but I know that you're listening. This episode is dedicated to you. And I told him that we would create an episode for him when we were talking. And what we were talking about was the value of the side quest. And it just so happens that he's from the video game industry.
Oh,
And for our fellow gamers out there, a side quest, as you would know, is when you deviate from the main quest, is your business, your focus, and you go on a different mission that isn't necessarily connected to the main quest, but could also reveal some treasure.
yes.
I don't know about you, Ryan. I love side quests.
I
Like
live
whenever
in
I'm
the
in a
side
game,
quests.
I side quest like crazy, right? And I feel like what we've learned in our business at startups.com were those side quests, those distractions, as they would be called, those deviations have become the most important part of our business.
100%, man. They might look like a detour to begin with, but at some point they either end up becoming a shortcut or just the path that ends up saving the entire run, you know?
Right. And it looks something like this. Hey, we're doing business A and everything, is probably okay. Maybe not. But let's say it's okay.
Yep.
And co-founder comes up and says, "Hey, I want to try path B." And path B is a tangent. Okay.
Yep.
It's something we don't normally do. And what I want to talk through in this episode is how that tangent normally is dismissed, right? Usually it's, hey, that's not focus. That's not the main quest line. That's not what we're here to do. And I think it's a giant mistake. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying let's get distracted as hell.
Yeah.
I'm saying we got to keep our minds open that maybe, just maybe, in almost every case for us, just maybe that side quest, that distraction leads to a better business.
Yeah.
And that I think I want to unpack today.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think this is way too easily written off as like the ADHD machinations of founders. When I look at it, man, it's curiosity as risk management.
Yeah. Curiosity.
Right?
Wow, that's a much
Like,
better way to put it. Yeah.
we're out there just exploring and figuring out what should we be doing. But so let's start by talking about like what I think you've called the myth of the linear path, right? Like
Right.
the linear path, that fairy tale that we tell investors, where in reality I see the real path as being more of a series of right angle turns based on some well-informed guesses, right? Things that we got to go explore, things we got to think about.
For sure. And I think if you didn't know how this business actually works, and Ryan, you and I have the benefit of working with thousands and
Yes.
thousands and thousands of founders. So we see every path there is. But what people think the path is, if you haven't done this before, most people are doing it for the first time. What you think the path is that you have an idea, you build product is accepted by market, company grows. That's how it works. And then there's a couple of twists and turns, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It is not how this works
No.
whatsoever, right?
No.
Like that's maybe what you think is in the brochure, but that ain't in the brochure, right? The real path is we have an idea. Within a few months, we realize it's a shitty idea. We rebuild idea. We try second idea. That's also a shitty idea. And then we rebuild it and we just keep doing it.
Yeah. Incrementally less shitty.
Kinda, right? Like sometimes, like iterating sounds like what happens when you mysteriously had a good idea the first time
Uh-huh.
and it just kept, being a good idea, which rarely ever happens. That's the myth of the linear path, that we
Yeah.
have an idea, we stay undistracted, and we just go and execute, and everything works. That sounds awesome.
Does.
And if you could magically do that, do that.
Yeah.
Good
You
luck
know
with
what's
that.
funny, Will? You know what's funny to me? Like anytime the path starts to feel like perfectly linear, smooth, my first instinct is, what am I missing? Right? I guess because we've done this so
Exactly.
much that like the
Yeah, you're
second
like,
it's like you just keep going straight. I'm like, are you sure about that? Like, because it never has ever never worked out that way in the past. So when it does start to feel like it's just on rails, as they say, I'm
yeah.
like, we're missing something here. Something's got to be off.
Let's take it back a step. Let's think of how improbable it would be that
Right?
you could maintain a linear path, right?
Yeah.
Here's what would have to happen in order for this to actually be even possible. Number one, you'd have to have an idea that had perfect product market fit or damn near to it. Now,
Hmm.
here's what's great. You would have had to have that idea and have never built or tested it yet, right? Or put it out in the market meaningfully or tried to
Yeah.
acquire customers, all the things that come, and somehow still hit that stride in order to make
Yeah.
zero deviation, right? Then competitors would enter the market and investors would enter the market, and you'd have to hire lots of people who have their own ideas, et cetera. And somehow mysteriously, none of that would change your path
Ever.
whatsoever. Like all of those things would have to fall in line in order for you to not deviate from path. Now, I say that. This isn't saying focus isn't important. Focus at the expense
Yeah.
of seeing what else is there is dangerous in my mind.
Yes.
I love focus. We love focus,
Yes.
but there's a cost to it.
Focus is only noble if you're working on the right thing, right? Other,
How do you
otherwise,
know?
it is absolutely not.
Yeah.
It is just planned distraction.
Yeah. Planned distraction. And I think that because folks haven't done this before, they haven't seen other path. Like, look at it this way. If you came from Big Corp exists now because some dude years and years ago, probably decades, if not centuries ago, went through this process and got you to here. Now that you're at Big Corp, you're at some insurance company or
Yeah.
bank or whatever you're at, right? All of those things have been figured out. Like all the side quests have already happened. Now, that's not to say at a Big Corp you couldn't, have a side quest, but it's rare. And I say that because a co-founder, let's say, coming out of that environment, they're used to the fact that things have been figured out, that there isn't a reason to go on a side quest because
Right.
we've already figured out product market
Oh,
fit and
man.
competition and everything else like that.
Yeah.
So you go into a startup with that mentality and you're like, hey, why would we do anything else? And it's like,
Uh-huh.
dude, you had the benefit of someone else having figured this out. This isn't that.
Yeah. No, linear planning is what happens when ego's in charge of the roadmap, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
because honestly, like I think it's one of the most dangerous phrases in startups, right? We already know. Do you though? Do you really actually know? Right? Especially if, like in your case, you're coming from like the example you're providing. If you're coming from big corp or something, you're gonna go start something that's based on the experiences that you already have. Yes, you do know some things, right? But those have to be readapted to the startup environment, right? And
Right.
certainty is not a startup asset, right? Adaptability is, but certainty, I think, in most cases, is a startup liability because we just don't know, right? A roadmap is just a story, right? It's a theory, not even a theory. Sorry, it's a hypothesis. The exploration is what provides the evidence that allows us to turn it into a theory, but we have to go through that exploration, and exploration comes most of the time through all this side questing.
One of the last episodes we did was how we're really good at failure.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think this tethers a lot to the side questing, the idea that we're willing to go try kind of everything, really just kind of everything, and see what works and what doesn't, because
Yeah.
we're really good at regrouping when failure happens, invariably. But I think for a lot of folks, they haven't had to go through that level of just jump off the bridge and see what happens kind of moment. And they're terrified of it. And to be
Sure.
fair, it's because it's terrifying, right? So again, if you're battling your co-founder, let's say, in this case, I'm saying co-founder wants to stay straight and narrow and you want to try something different. If you're battling co-founder and co-founder is like, I want to go in this specific direction, and I think any deviation is a mistake.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with conviction. Nothing wrong with conviction. And I respect that in focus.
That's exactly it, right? Conviction's great if you've developed conviction around the vector that's actually going to lead to success. But like at the stage at which sometimes we become convicted, we get convicted, it becomes a life sentence of the wrong sort, right? We don't want that. We got to be really careful. And I think it's important to think about, we're not changing our mind. We're not changing course entirely. We're updating our model, right? We're being
What if?
flexible enough because, to your point, we couldn't possibly, right, we wouldn't have probably would not be right from the beginning, right?
Right.
It is an experimentative process. We have to do these things. And so to me, the side
I don't
quests are the laboratory.
I don't think as a company matures even a little bit, from an idea even to product and market, I don't think people understand that this process doesn't end. For example, in the
Correct.
early stages, we got in a lean startup, we got in a hypothesis, we got into all these things about around idea validation.
Yep.
And the idea was, hey, we're going to try a bunch of stuff and we're going to see which idea sticks and what to build. That's not where this process stops.
Correct.
Right? That is one milestone,
Yeah.
but the process where we have to keep looking at what if, what else, what next never ends. And I think when it starts to end is when you actually start to run into problems, right? When you
Yeah.
actually start to run into a situation
Yeah.
where your competition is like, well, we'll try out what if.
Exactly it. Right? It's
Uh,
it's it's what we said before, right? It's when right? When you have certainty, you think you have certainty, and that can feel very secure, and that can feel really great. I don't know if you saw this, Will, but there was an interesting physics discovery made this week that actually reversed a previous theory using AI. And the thing that they found most interesting about it was that the discovery, the fact that it reversed an existing kind of proven to the extent that we
yeah.
could theory, and then hypothesized and proved the real solution to this. The findings when humans looked at this, they went like, one of the reasons this happened is that that's something that a human would have been sure wouldn't have worked, right? The
Exactly.
danger of
Exactly.
certainty, right?
So let's play this out in our world, meaning the
Sure.
startups.com world. Okay. I want to prove a case where I believe these side quests aren't distractions. They can be, by the way, you can absolutely just be straight up distracted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, yes.
every,
Yes, of course.
every one of us has some level of ADHD that
Yep.
feeds that distraction beautifully.
There's plenty of
However,
shiny ball syndrome in the founder space.
oh my God, right? Let's go back in time to the year 2012.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
I remember it
You and
well.
I were younger and more vibrant. We were launching a company called Fundable.com, which still
Yes.
exists today. And at the time, crowdfunding was a huge deal. Was a
Yeah.
huge deal. This was like the era of Kickstarter, in
Yep.
Indiegogo back in that day. And we decided around 2011, because that's when we were building it, and then we launched it in 2012, that we were going to launch an equity crowdfunding platform where
Yes.
people could make equity investments on the same way they were making reward style investments for products.
Just sitting around waiting for Obama to sign the Jobs Act to make it
Yeah,
legal. Do you
exactly,
remember
exactly. Wow,
that?
this is a
Oh
blast from the
man.
past. Yeah, 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 yeah. And so we're all pumped up. This is going to be world changing, what have you.
Yep.
And it turns out, like 30 other companies, it was pumped up as we were doing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same exact
Oh
thing.
yeah. It was quite a crowd at the starting
A funny
gates.
aside, because as you know this, but I want to tell the audience, there was this moment where I'm sitting across from a friend of mine in Santa Monica, and we're both talking about how pumped up we are about our new ideas. And about halfway into the conversation, it occurs to us that we're talking about the exact
We're
same
building
idea,
the
right?
same thing. Yeah.
And it was so awkward. It'd be like saying, I just met this girl. She's the girl of my dreams. Like, I'm ready to propose. I bought the ring, right? I think I'm going to propose tomorrow. And your buddy's like, so am I. This is
Yeah.
amazing. I'm
Right.
going to propose tomorrow as
Same
well. And
girl.
you realize it's the same girl, right? Yeah, yeah. Anyway, anyway, so there was at least 30 other companies, as you
Yeah.
recall, that had the exact same idea. Now, there's a couple ways you can look at that. Number one, if 30 other companies had the same idea, it must be a pretty good idea. Like
Yeah.
everybody brainstormed it, they talked to investors, they got investment, they went down the same path. We launched this thing. And it goes, as I remember it, okay. Like, how do you remember it?
Look, it went okay. It went okay. It didn't turn into everything we wanted to, neither in the beginning nor over time. Like there was that sense that, well, maybe this will mature. And here's the really interesting thing. So maybe this will mature, maybe the market will come together over time. That was the linear path. Right.
Right.
And so we could have
Yep.
just said that. We could have just followed that. We could have said, look, it's a new market. It's going to take time. We realized very early on that one of the things that people needed was to understand how to use it. We built the platform and then we let a bunch of people into a gym who'd never worked out before and they were dropping
Yep.
weights on their
That's a
feet
great way
and
to
hurting
put it. Yeah.
themselves. So
Yeah.
we built out a
Yeah,
personal
yeah.
training arm and that helped.
Yep.
And that helped, but the market never really matured. And so at the same time, we were engaging in those side quests and saying, okay, cool. We love working with founders and equity crowdfunding was where we wanted to start, but what else can we be doing? And
Yep.
that was where the side questing began, right?
Yep.
But of those 30 companies, Will, we're still around. how many of the others, if you had to, and it's the finger in the wind here, how many of the others are still around that just stayed equity crowdfunding?
I can't name two. Right. And if there are more, I apologize to, a lot of this
Yes.
people are our friends. I apologize if you're still around. It's not because I'm disrespecting the fact that you're still around. It's because I just don't even pay attention anymore.
Yep. It just doesn't, it became kind of an irrelevant.
It's so off my
irrelevant
radar.
space.
Right.
Yep.
And that's coming from a guy who, a team here who owned that platform.
Right.
And still do. Right.
Which is a
So
super important point, right? A startup without side quests is a startup with a single point of failure, right?
a great way to
Single
put it.
critical
Yeah.
point of failure.
Yeah.
And we managed to avoid that, right? We weren't sure about any of this stuff, but we said, hey, look, this is one vector. This is one way that we can be helpful to this population that we want to help. So let's fall in love with who we want to help, but let's not fall in love with exactly how we're helping them, because we have no idea how this ends. Now that we do know how this ends, I'm real glad we took that course.
So let me explain what happened so folks understand. Throughout 2012, as you mentioned, we're loading people onto the platform, and we keep running into the same problem over and over and over. People want to raise money from investors, but they are sorely unprepared.
Yes.
To do it. They don't understand what a pitch deck is. They don't understand the fundamentals of their business. They haven't done any product market fit, idea validation, literally nothing, right? They just know they don't have money and they need money. So we were like, well, where are they going right now to fix all those problems, to create their pitch deck, to go create, all these other things? And we realized nowhere.
Right.
And so we went on what I would call an epic side quest, where we went out and we did diligence on 200 companies in the startup space to purchase. And we ended up, not 200, 100, I'm sorry, 100 companies that we ended up doing. We talked to way more.
It's kind of like the way I feel about how many children I have. Some days it's 3, some days it's 100. Was it 100? Was it 200? Was it 1,000?
We talked to over 200. We did diligence on 100, which is a lot of companies. And we purchased 6 venture-backed companies. And they were all within the startup space. And what we wanted to be able to do was be able to help startups at each step of this problem. And so we ended up buying companies to help people get customers, to help find advisors, all these things. It was all these things which became essentially the genesis of startups.com.
Yeah.
Now, what's really interesting about that to me is we didn't hesitate for a second to side quest on this one.
Nope.
Right?
Not at all.
And we had no idea how this would turn out. It's not like, we were like, oh, well, let's clearly go buy a bunch of companies and blah, blah, blah. Who are we to do any of this? And it goes back to our previous episode, is we just weren't afraid to fail, which is our greatest strength, because we just went full charge into everything.
Something that's really funny about everything we talk about here is that none of it is new. Everything you're dealing with right now has been done 1,000 times before you, which means the answer already exists. You may just not know it, but that's okay. That's kind of what we're here to do. We talk about this stuff on the show, but we actually solve these problems all day long at groups.startups.com. So if any of this sounds familiar, stop guessing about what to do. Let us just give you the answers to the test and be done with it.
I want to throw another one in there, because the macro point here is that side quests are not random, right? Not when they're done right. Yes, the distractions are random.
Yeah.
They're controlled experiments that have some level of capped downside, right? With some intention of upside. And just to make it clear that, it's not that we were immune to considering things that probably were outside the wheelhouse, because yes, all these things definitely had a point. But Will, do you remember a moment when for about a week, we were very excited in the office as we were considering buying Atari?
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Oh, dude, I totally forgot that we were going to buy Atari.
We speaking of
we
video
ran
games
the numbers,
and side
we were
quests, we almost turned video games into our side quest.
Wow, I totally forgot about that.
Yes. We did diligence on Atari.
I totally forgot about that. Yep. For those of you who don't, neither know nor care, there was a point in time, this had to be like 2013, 2014, where Atari, the famous brand, like the actual, one of the first home consoles, was going up for sale. It was going bankrupt, essentially. And the assets were going to go up for sale. And they were going to go for ones of millions of dollars, which even back then was a lot, because it was just basically the brand, right? There wasn't, I remember they owned some games and stuff like that. But as children of the 80s, we were like, are you got to be kidding me?
The nostalgia element alone was just like, if I had lived one day with that business card, I'd have led a better life in some ways, just for the fun of it, right? But it was a complete deviation, right? Talk about
even we were like, dude, this is pretty far off the mark. But yeah, so at some point we even considered buying Atari. So within that, though, within these side quests, I want to point out more than the outcome, which is, it helped kind of drive what became startups.com.
Yeah.
I also want to point, we learned so much
Oh my God.
from the quest.
Yes. The
right?
quest
from
itself.
the quest.
Right. Not the outcome, not the treasure at the end, because sometimes there wasn't.
Right.
Yeah. The quest
So,
itself.
You remember this part. So I moved my family out to San Francisco.
Yes.
Right. And every day I'm reporting back to you guys of all these meetings I'm having. I'm going to be just meetings nonstop with everybody I can meet with. And we're learning so much from this. We're like, hey, do you know, like, this company's, growing at this rate, or this company's failing completely, or like, we got so much intel from this quest.
Yeah.
As to what our market looked like. And Ryan, I would argue that some of that intel serves us to this day. Let me explain.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to argue that at all. No argument here.
Well,
100%.
we learned a lot about what not to do. Right?
Absolutely.
In going in on these quests.
Valuable.
Yep, exactly. I was like, not going to go into that business. Like, businesses we thought were incredible, like Atari. We're like, we talked to the founders, and we're very founder forward. So when we talk to founders about buying their business, we don't sit there and like grill them like a private equity firm would, or an M&A firm. We sit on their side of the table, and I've done this a million times, particularly with the companies that we acquired. And we say, if I'm in your shoes right now as a founder, here are my options. You could sell to us, and that might be an okay outcome. I'm not telling you it's the best outcome. It's an outcome. But here are your other options. And by doing that, by putting ourselves in the shoes of all these other founders, we got to get a firsthand view of how all these other markets actually worked.
Right.
And again, we were talking to lots of funded companies, like venture funded companies. And I made a lot of great friends out of this process as well. But a really fascinating part was we got more market intel as to how every facet of our business could work. And I think 18 months than we could have possibly gathered through, as much research as we could ever bought or done ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. It was a crazy force multiplier in terms of the understanding of the markets and where things were going, where things weren't going. It was incredible, man. It's interesting, but I'm starting to think of, side quests as insurance policies that we pay for with time, right? It's all it cost us. It was time. And I'd argue if you can't afford that level of exploration, you definitely can't afford to be wrong about anything, right? And so the only way you're going to find out about things is that exploration, right? So it's a bit of a catch-22 there. You have to find a way to be able to afford this level of exploration, this level of curiosity.
Okay, right. So if we're proposing a side quest to our ornery co-founder, right, who is stay the straight and narrow, or an advisor, investor, whomever, I think part of that argument is simply there's a good chance it won't succeed per se.
Sure.
But here's what I think we'll learn in the failing, right? Here's what I want to unpack and explore that will tell us without question that is not the path for us.
Sure.
And I think that part of the explanation is often lost because it's like, hey, I want to try this other thing. And this ornery co-founder is like, well, that won't succeed. Probably not. But here's what I'm hoping to learn in that process that will help our current path succeed. Or again, inform if this is the current path.
Yeah. And I think that's important, right? I think that the insight, the learning, the kind of the what if path you want to go down, I think that is the treasure, right? I think that's the important measurable. If other things come out of it, right? There's other outcomes on their side, great. But I think that the what am I trying to understand? What am I trying to learn is the actual treasure. And if it doesn't have one of those, then it's probably not a side quest. It's just procrastination around what you actually should be doing.
I want to throw another one out there, and this is a little bit of a side quest to this discussion. One of the most popular side quests that I see with startups is becoming a services business, right? You and I see it all the time.
Yes.
Right? We're trying to build a product. Product isn't ready. Market adoption isn't there. We don't have the customers. So we kind of spin off this services business to kind of just do that work for the client to generate some cash in order to hopefully get back to the product business. And I hear pushback on this all the time. Well, that's not the product. That's just a services business. Dude, if it pays the bills, it is the business.
It is
right?
the business.
That's actually
not
how
the side
businesses
quest.
work.
That's the quest. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the pay the bills is the quest, right? How we get there is the question. And I bring this up because for a lot of startups, when we talk about that nonlinear path, they also think that income should only come from exactly what we built and have in front of us right now. Incorrect.
Because you get $2 for every one of those dollars when it's time to pay the bills, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
They're worth more, right?
Like, if we could explain how many businesses have taken the path of like the reason they're there today is because they did 20 different things to keep the bills paid.
Yeah.
You know, our most famous example, of course, is the Airbnb thing where Brian Chesky famously,
Yep.
and by the way, this story is so old, I don't even know if it's true anymore, but for those that haven't heard it 1,000 times, the super short version, Chesky was running out of money for Airbnb. He decided to have this crazy stunt where he sold cereal. He sold Captain McCain's and Obama O's during those
Obama O's.
elections. To give an
Yeah.
idea how old this story is now. If I recall, like $40,000.
Yeah. It was enough to keep going. That's what I remember. I don't remember how
Correct.
much you made, but
And
it was
today we
enough to
have
keep the lights on.
Airbnb. By the way, this is told by him. So this isn't
Right.
me making up the story. In fact, it's told by him on our site, like
Yes.
on an interview on our site. So hopefully it's true. But think of how friggin' random that side quest was. And we've done whole episodes on this, how making money is not a side quest. It's like however you have to do it. Staying alive is not a side quest.
Right. It's the pavement for the runway. You need it. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, to the point now where like if somebody tells me they're building a software, one of my first questions is, okay, how much have you delivered as a service? Like, have you done this for people? Do
Yeah.
you know what they need? Because if not, prepare for a whole shit ton of side quests to come your way because you're gonna have to do them all to figure out what people actually need. Right? I
Yeah.
love doing the service first because it teaches you so much about what people actually need. For me, product comes down to three things: proven, proprietary, process. All right, the three P's of building an actual product. If you don't have a proven proprietary process, and if you're building software that you've never delivered service for, you can't. You're gonna run into P4, which is pivot, which just means we built the wrong shit first, right? And obviously so. So yeah, I just at this point I treat service as not as an optional step or a side quest, but as the very beginning of what you're going to do to go build product.
I remember years and years and years ago, the Basecamp guys, like this is like 20 years ago, right? They used to run these sessions, I think in Chicago, that were just training sessions.
Yeah.
And they'd basically charge an arm and a leg for them and run them in. And at one point they got asked, the founders, the co-founders, why are you doing this? Like, you guys are a software company. Why are you running these sessions and like doing events business essentially?
Uh-huh.
And they looked at it as like, it makes money.
Yeah. You remember
Is that
why we
even a
built the software
question?
business, right? This does the
Yeah.
same thing.
Makes
Yeah.
money. So I think a lot of people though will look at these side quests and they'll be like, "Oh, that's just a pivot." And I think that's a huge mistake. I think it's a total misclassification of the side quest. A side quest is an exploration that might lead to a pivot. A
Yeah.
pivot is when you figured out that the side quest is the right answer
Yeah.
and you change the whole business,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I want to make sure these two things don't get pushed hand in hand. Us going to San Francisco and looking for other businesses is a side quest.
Yeah. not a
Us
pivot.
changing the whole business to startups.com
Right.
is a pivot,
Right.
right?
Will, I
Ain't
bought
the same thing.
lawyers.com this morning. We're a new business now. That's a pivot.
Right.
Really shitty pivot.
But if you think about it, we're sitting here on this podcast, which was essentially a side quest. Do you recall how
absolutely
this
was a
whole thing
side
started?
quest.
Like, do you remember when we started like kicking this off? It didn't go that well, by the way.
You're talking about the, you know what? We should auction those off at some point, Will. The 3 first episodes that will never see the light of day, where
will
we
never see
opened
light of
by
day.
talking about the weather and like it was all so stilted. Oh my God, it was so bad.
We
It
had no
was
idea
so
what we
bad.
were doing. Yeah, like we thought like what a talk show would be, and it
Yeah.
was just not at all.
It was
And it
not.
made no sense whatsoever.
Right.
But let me put it in this framing. For our podcast, which has how many episodes now?
We are shooting 327 today, buddy.
Damn. Okay. So that's a lot of episodes,
It's a lot
which
of
has
episodes.
become one of our best conversion tools for those wonderful folks
Yep.
that listen. You know, you build a relationship with us, you get a sense for who we are, and maybe you buy some of our stuff. Maybe you don't. Honestly, we're going to produce the podcast either way, which is the
Exactly.
point.
Yes.
When we first started doing this, it's just something that Ryan and I wanted to do. It wasn't, hey, this is going to be a great conversion tool. Like, that'd be great, obviously. We weren't even entirely sure what all the topics would be.
Right.
We just hit record, went poorly
We
at
still
first.
aren't.
Right? Yeah, still figuring it out. But listen, this was a side quest. This side quest was, you know, we had plenty of other things we were working on. We weren't short
Yeah.
of things to do. But we took this random side quest as the podcast, and it wound up becoming like a really integral part of our business, both from attracting customers, but also from developing content. I mean, it has so many legs.
Yeah. Also, just go back to like the learnings that we took away from the 18 months of exploration in San Francisco, all those conversations you had.
Yeah.
Think about all of the things that we have come to more concrete understanding of and better ability to share and talk to founders about, because we do this every week, right? This has become more than just a part of the business and more than part of this is a part of life for me at this point, right? I look forward to this
Right.
every week. We do this.
Yep.
It's something important at so many levels, and it's taught us a ton, right? These were obviously all ideas that you had, I had, and we've
Yeah.
discussed.
Yep.
But like through that discussion, these things become a little bit more like a product, right? It becomes advice we can deliver, becomes help we can give at scale
Right.
and in person and everything. And so it's just, again, like we never would have been able to see that had we not tried it, and had we not
Exactly.
keep trying it after the third episode. Because if we'd only waited on the merits of the first 3 episodes, we definitely wouldn't be talking today.
That's 0 listeners. It's funny. So I think for a lot of people, like they get nervous about the side quest because they feel it's a distraction. They feel it's tantamount to a pivot, and pivot is different. Pivot's like, dude, we're putting all our eggs in a different basket. Not to be taken lightly.
A pivot is a marriage. A side quest is a first date, right? Like,
exactly.
Side quest is we're gonna go figure this out.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think for a lot of folks, when they see those side quests, hey, let's try something else out, they get nervous. Understandably, they get nervous and say, oh, we should only be focusing on this. It's like, maybe. And not every side quest is a good side quest. Most will fail. Most side quests will fail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But again, that's okay.
Because that's information, right? That's information. Because otherwise, like what I would say, if you're not side questing and you are at a point where like, it's not working, so we have to make a change. Let's stick to the pivot and side quest thing here, right? So we don't want to pivot on vibes, right? We don't want to pivot based on the fact that, look, well, this doesn't seem to be working. Let's try this instead entirely.
Yeah.
We can side quest our way into evidence, and then we can decide whether the side quest is how we earn the right to pivot.
Right. I agree. And look, to put it in no uncertain terms, it takes balls to side quest, right? It takes courage to explore.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's easy to say, no, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to focus on this. I don't say easy. That also requires discipline. But when you say, hey, I might be wrong, which I think is a big part, as you mentioned ego a few minutes ago. I think to be able to say, hey, the current main quest right now, the focal point where we're at, I might be wrong. And it's okay to have conviction. It's okay to show up in your meetings and say, you know what? I believe in this product so much. I don't want to change course whatsoever. I want to stand, which is okay, right? Which is okay. But it takes a huge amount of courage to say, I genuinely believe this is the path, but I'm not afraid to find out it's not. You and I go into a meeting, and often we'll say this when we're in this discussion. We'll say, can we start by agreeing that none of us knows?
Yeah. Nobody knows.
Right?
Nobody knows the actual answer. And then there's a few ways to go and find that out. We can stick to a linear path, hope for the best, and find out what time tells us. Or we can go side quest and quickly get answers. Right. And I think that's part of the construction of the side quest for me, is thinking of it in terms of like, does this allow us to more quickly understand the context? Does this allow us to more quickly get to an answer that, again, feeds back into main quest? Right. Like we got a side quest to go get the hammer. We need to open the chest that's part of the main quest, right? You got to do this stuff. The big risk here isn't in trying something new. I know we think of that as like a division of focus, or whatever, but the big risk isn't in trying something new. The biggest risk is being wrong in private and sticking to that, right?
Right.
Our job isn't to defend the plan, right? I think that's what founders put into that position a lot, where it's so in pitch mode all the time that we feel like it's our job to defend the plan, but it's our job to discover the truth. This is what we have to agree to, and side quests are one of the ways that we get there.
I agree. And I think if you look at our history, like our success over 15 years as a company, which I'm very proud of, both the longevity, how many people we've helped, and all the people that have kind of come through this company over time, what's made us the most successful hasn't been conviction to knowing what the answer is. It's had been the openness to being able to say, what if? What if that? What if that? And I think it's also part and parcel with what we do for a living. We're in the business, quite literally, of helping people ask what if. It would be a bit it'd be hypocritical if we never did it ourselves. But we do it. We put ourselves on the line all the time. Every year we make big bets on totally different things, and we see what happens. Like we said before, we're willing to be wrong. And I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage. So I think for a lot of startups, the biggest risk for your startup is not being able to take that linear path. The biggest risk is not knowing. So the only way that you can de-risk this business is by taking the plunge, by trying every side quest that you can within reason and figuring out which one of those actually defines where you're supposed to really be at.
Overthinking your startup because you're going it alone? You don't have to, and honestly, you shouldn't, because instead, you can learn directly from peers who've been in your shoes. Connect with bootstrapped founders and the advisors helping them win in the Startups.com community. Check out the Startups.com community at www.startups.com to see if it's for you. Could be just the thing you need. I hope to see you inside.